Okay, so Luke, you know what? It's a couple minutes after 8 p.m. here, so why don't we get the show on the road? So, for everybody on the call, thank you very much for joining us this evening. This is our last webinar for 2019. I can't believe how quick the year has gone by, but I figured that we would kind of go with a good bang. I think this is an important topic. You know, tenants can cause some serious grief, in your home, and kind of cause problems that it can cause you lots of different issues. So tonight we have Luke, who's going to be sharing what he does in his company, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy what the services they have to offer. So before we kind of jump right into it, I want to kind of go through a few things with you guys just in regards to some upcoming events. Like I said, we're pretty close to end of year, but there are still a few things that are happening. So next week, Wednesday, we've got another fast start training class. So if you're brand new to Smart Home Choice, you're not familiar with exactly what we do. We are an education company. And the fast start class that we host is really good for either beginning investors or investors who maybe have a couple properties. And really what we do is we dive deep into the numbers. And that's where we see a lot of beginning investors make the mistake. When they get into it, not understanding the numbers, and they end up exiting the game before they really got a chance to get started and understand how amazing real estate investing can really be. All right, so October 20th, we're going to be doing that one, Ajax. One of the things that we love doing with our investors is property tours. The thing that we've learned over the, I would say, last year or so, and it's really made it a real big success for us, is that instead of now just only going out and taking a look at properties that are on the market, we will actually now take you through our investors' properties that they're in the process of actually converting from a single family home into a 2-unit. So you can see that process. You can get a chance to sit down and have a conversation with those investors. And if you're familiar with the verge strategy, essentially that's what they're doing, where they buy, they renovate, they rent, refinance, and repeat. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. And also, from time to time, we will do private property tours as well too. So if we don't have a particular date set, if there's a large enough group, we will definitely do some private property tours for you. Okay. One of the things that we did this year, and we're definitely going to continue to do it into 2020, is we took it a couple of the mastermind events, and what we started doing was doing more social events. And this is, man, let me tell you, this was a fantastic event. And what we do is we get all of our investors, all of our clients, and for this particular one, we actually rented a party bus, and we enjoyed the day, had a few drinks, had dinners. And really what this does is it allows these investors to get together to eventually potentially do joint ventures down the road. And really what we love about it the most is that, it's like-minded people getting together and doing something that's really going to help themselves change their future for them, for their families as well too. And with that, our very last one that we're doing this year is already sold out. So we definitely have seen the huge success of doing these social events. And again, something that we're going to continue to do into the new year. I think we might even do a comedy club next year. I'm thinking that might be a fun one to do, right? Get some laughs in there. But with that, one last thing is, even though I know that Luke is going to be sharing some incredible ideas, listen, I've made tons of mistakes with tenants over the years. And with that, I've learned a lot, and I wrote a guide on how to make tenant screening a lot easier for yourself. All right, so feel free to go to smarthomechoice.ca. You can download that absolutely for free. And with that, I am now going to pass it over to you, Luke. So thank you very much for joining this evening. I know I'm going to learn lots of some good stuff from you this evening. I'm sure everybody else on the call is going to as well too. So let me stop sharing, and you should have access to it now.
All right. And you guys can hear me okay right now?
Yep, so far so good.
Perfect. See my screen?
I can.
Yep.
Perfect. Futuristic.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for including me in your day today. Appreciate the opportunity. It's always great to get in front of people that we integrate or interact with so readily on a day-to-day basis, to really just open up their ears to what we're doing, how we look at the world. And so I expect a lot of you have heard of Naborly before. We are a Toronto-based company and have experienced very organic growth, word of mouth. So if you're one of those people that use us and have mentioned us in a conversation, I thank you so much. Gary asked me to talk to you guys today about the importance of tenant screening, which I'm the first to admit from a tenant screening company isn't the sexiest topic to talk about, but as Gary just mentioned, it is important. And I don't know a group of people that's more passionate about tenant screening than us here at Naborly. So I'm excited to kind of go into it. At the end of the day, it's something all investors need to be considerate of. So no matter what, have a process and make sure it answers the questions that you're looking for. I'm going to go back to the basics a little bit today, kind of question the current processes and what we do and why we've been doing it. Not a lot has changed. And if you do know anything about Naborly, you know that we're all about questioning the current way of doing things and looking for ways that we can improve that. And so, as I said, I expect some of you guys have an idea of that. And I'll just, as I said, forgive me for being so, I guess, basic or back to the simplicity of things and just asking the question. So what do we do, or what did we do? And I say that, what do landlords do? I'm not talking about Naborly, so to speak. There will be points where I do plug what we're doing. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about our brand new product, Naborly Shield, which is in a way the answer to some of the questions we're going to ask today. So what? Although it all starts with proper marketing of the property, I advise you all to take that seriously. Good pictures, good description, and more of that pipeline will be filled with potential applicants. But once you have that pipeline narrowed down, you're going to do that meet and greet. You're going to use your intuition. When tenants have filled out the application, it's a gift. You got to go through. Have options is great, but it does take time. You're going to get objective. You're going to look at the cash flow, stability of the tenant, call references, review documents. You do pull credit. I recommend this doesn't come directly from the tenant. You and I both know that currently it's pretty easy to doctor something like that. I think my grandpa could do that if he's given the right reason. And so it's just important to find a credit bureau. Naborly has focused on that to be the one who can simply offer that at the very least for you guys. How we approach this process, it all starts with a process. I think I might have mentioned this already, but the first thing you can do is be professional, is create a strong process, put everyone through that same process. This will weed out tire kickers and potentially risky tenants. You're not going to have people feeling like they could take advantage of you if you have a real thoughtful process in place. Detailed application with clear instructions. The only reason you want to do this, or the primary reason you want to do this, is you don't want to be chasing tenants for those documents and different things that you asked. You want to make sure they fill out all the fields in order to, either avoid any sort of allowance of misinformation or lack of information. You want to get that in. Collecting relevant documents and all those sources obviously can be challenging, but it is something that you never want to sacrifice. And as I mentioned, attain a relationship with a credit bureau, because you don't want to be getting this information directly from the tenant for your own interests. Obviously here, what I'm going to say is you can save a lot of time simply using Naborly. We're going to consolidate all those tasks above, make it as simple as setting an application to a tenant and getting that information back, and not chasing people around for that type of stuff. For those of you familiar, I apologize. I do want to kind of jump into here at this stage about what the Naborly Report is. And so what we've done is we've questioned the current status or standard of underwriting tenants that has been an Equifax TransUnion report, understanding what this tenant's financial situation is very helpful. But it's not the end to all of all the questions we are concerned with. So what we've created is our new model of underwriting tenants. We have made some updates in the past. This is the snapshot I'd like to show you guys here. It all starts with the application process that I've detailed. Tenants are going to upload documentation, including their employment and income, and we're going to go ahead and verify that or not. We're going to go into our proprietary analysis on tenants and tenancy outcomes to give you an idea of how suitable this tenant is for that property. We look at different factors like proximity to work and what that means for successful tenancy. We look at factors, does this person have dependents, and is there a public school nearby for them to move into? So basically encompassing the traditional rules of thumb that a property manager would use when making a decision on a specific tenant. We want to equip you guys with that to make it really, really quick and get you guys comfortable with how we approach that. We have a financial analysis here that is obviously very important, giving you the rent income ratios, debt income ratios, and an overall cash flow analysis. And then of course, you're going to see their credit score, which again is always has been a standard piece of the puzzle. We include it as an important variable for your guys' decision-making as it is for us. Moving on to more of this.
Can I just jump right in here, Luke, for a quick minute? Can you kind of just go back to that slide? And so I don't know if you mentioned this yet or not, but this is now absolutely free, right? This report. So as opposed to now somebody going to Equifax, they can actually now just go to Naborly and get this nice, cool report that spits out, how suitable a tenant could be for their particular property. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So that brings in kind of an economic decision that landlords have made in the past about, which really creates a second step in the process. You have 10 applicants come in, you're gonna have to pay Equifax 20 or 30 bucks a pop for a credit file. So you try to say, what can I learn from this application? Narrow it down to 3 applicants and then just pull credit on them. You don't have to worry about that, stage or that decision making. You sincerely don't have to make a decision until this report is in front of you. And so you have 10 applicants go through that and you have a much better concept of who actually is the best tenant for the property. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, perfect. No, that's a great feature, right? So I don't want that to not be understood properly.
Yeah, no, it's sometimes I forget, but we've been free for the last 2 years. We used to be a paid for service, but we realized, let's work towards that target of nothing, and look at different types of business models, which we've been successfully achieving. Now, going to why we do this all, and this is probably the most simple question I can ask you guys, and I don't mean to, do this in some sort of peculiar way, but why are we doing this? And it's because we want to make sure the asset's taken care of. We either are working towards or have worked hard to get where we are to have this type of passive income, and we want to make sure it's secure. It's what you're supposed to do. Any investor club or anything is going to mention this type of thing. So it's just the status quo. And we feel that it obviously is important enough for us to create an entire business around. You want to make sure the tenant can afford rent, that they're going to be happy there, obviously, and you want to identify red flags. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're going to be reducing risk. That's what we're doing at every stage. And as a risk company ourselves, we understand, and that's really what we're here to help you with. And so I'm going to move into here, and this is why really we're doing this. So simple. You're expecting $24,000 of revenue from a $2,000 a month property. What business owner is going to, take liberties when trying to decide how they're going to protect that or make that income? So whether or not you have the financial freedom to forgo this rent for months on end, one, congratulations, but two, why would you do that if you had the choice? And that's why we're mitigating risk. And I want to definitely jump in some interesting things we're doing. The landscape. So all you guys know, this is even in Southern Ontario, even probably inflated. These are national rates, but incomes are increasing, of course. The fact is rent consistently outpaces the increases in income. And we've seen it all firsthand, higher rent income ratios. This isn't a chronic problem in a sense. It's just the way it is. People have different allocations of their budget. But at the end of the day, that's a big question mark in terms of what that means in terms of risk and how often you might see a problem with delinquency or default. Today, more than 40% of renters pay more than what was the industry standard of 30%. And that's their gross income. So when you look at those types of numbers, you got to understand, and part of Naborly is understanding that full picture. So just because someone's rent income ratio is the way it is, doesn't mean they're not a good suit. But what other factors do you need to look at to consider if they're a good fit? I always use the anecdote: if they are going to be walking across the street to work every day, that sure means they don't have those large commuting costs that another tenant may. And that's how we look at this whole picture. That's how we underwrite risk. We're not simply just looking at objective financial data. We're looking at, suitability criteria as well. The tenant landscape, this has always been a important stat for us. This is kind of where we hit the ground running. So this has been hanging over our head for since we started the business. 63% of renters have poor credit. So when you have that situation and you're a landlord and you've created a criteria based on credit alone, you're going to be saying goodbye to 2/3 of the people that are potentially renting. And now if you have the luxury to do that, that's fantastic. But we question the criteria that's based on, the relationship that has to someone being a good tenant or not. I think we all believe at Naborly that this is an important variable, but it isn't the only variable necessary when making a decision on a prospective tenant. Continuing on here. Now, this is U.S.
Sorry,
data.
can I jump in there again, Luke, if you don't mind? So,
yeah,
so
sure.
where are you getting that number from? Is that just from all of the credit apps that you've seen go through Naborly, or are you getting that from somewhere else like Equifax?
Yeah, so that's been in line what we've found since we partnered with Equifax,
Okay.
but it also is consistent when we started, and that's based on renters, the renter market. So those are people between the ages of 18 to 40 years old, who obviously are the primary class of people that will be renting from you, and that is obviously the statistic we wanted to focus on.
Right, and I think it's also important point as well
sorry.
too, though, is that that's not the only thing that you do focus on, right? I mean, I've had some tenants that don't have the best credit that have gone into some of my properties, and they've ended up being some of the best tenants I've had. So you look at the overall picture, and that's what Naborly does.
100%. So, you look at the data set we look at, the credit report is always going to be included. But, as important the financial data is, it's the current financial data more so than the historical. So making sure they can afford to pay, understanding why they didn't pay rent or didn't pay their bills, and they've been in a situation that isn't good, understanding their historical use of credit. If they haven't used credit before, what can you expect? And obviously, I think any seasoned property manager or landlord is going to be able to look at that. And I don't see any reason why we can't just go one step ahead and get that information in front of you before you have to kind of make that analysis yourself. So yeah, absolutely. It's all about as many data points as possible. In a rental application, we take over 500 and try to understand what this looks like. And although our machine kind of was based on, the traditional rules of thumb a property manager would make when looking at an application, it evolves and gets more and more accurate every time we screen an applicant. So this is American data, a national average of tenants facing eviction. I want to be clear here. It's types of people that are encountering situations where they've gone delinquent. Doesn't necessarily mean they got evicted, but they have caused financial strain. For themselves, they've experienced it, and that's caused their landlord or property manager the same. And so this is an important factor because, again, in Ontario, I was troubling to find an actual statistic on this exactly. But the factor there is, and I think we all know, is a lot of this stuff will go unreported because it's really a question of opportunity costs. So although I do believe this value has an impact in our decision making and why we do take so much care in this process, if the data was out there on how many landlords struggle to get rent on time every month, or dealt with an early vacancy, or just simply experienced something that was impactful to their passive income or to be passive income, that statistic would be staggering, and could be obviously very correlated with the type of people or the type of statistics there are given people facing evictions. And so this is a real problem that we're trying to solve. But at the end of the day, when I go over this landscape, the root is trying to figure out why we do this again. And I'm jumping back to simply reducing risk. And I don't want to miss anything out. So this is a perfect time for anyone to jump in and just blurt out an example of what other risk reducing strategies they have. My list isn't completely long, but we are limited by law on a certain level. So I just did want to present the legal ones. So tenant screening, obviously that's important. That's the first thing, reducing risk. We collect a last month's rent deposit. That's the maximum and that's what it's dedicated for, is that last month's of rent. So when it comes to tenant screening, it provides insight on today. And obviously it's an important step and it should make you feel comfortable. And it's really the only thing you can do at that point in time, but no one can predict what happens tomorrow. No one has a crystal ball, and unforeseeable things do happen. So tenant screening, half measure. We collect last month's rent. I did just mention that, but basically again, this has to be, very much follow the law of the LTB, and it can take a long time. I'm not sure if anyone here has ever had to withhold last month's rent, but it's not easy. And most of the time tenants simply know it's there, and they will do what they can to just have that, basically truly act as that last month's rent. The type of deposit or anything like that, it really never acts in that spirit, and it can be really challenging to deal with. You can request post-dated checks. This is something we heard very recently from a landlord. I didn't know people were still doing this. I think it's a strategy. I think there's a lot of holes in it. One of those, of course, is, a post-dated check is only as valuable as the money that's in the account. And I feel like when we're dealing with evictions, default, or anything like that, this may only be a very, very much so a half measure. You can include a co-signer, but the fact is the landlord tenant board will, treat this much the same. So chasing that money down, if something does go wrong, is going to be an issue. And I'm not, I do open the floor for any types of strategies you guys use for collecting or reducing that risk. But at this point, I can move on to some more things here. So I want to welcome you guys to 2019. I don't say that too facetiously, but we are excited about the innovation we have in the market. Landlords have been using tenant screening, last month's rent, to offset risk from tenant default for 4 decades. And we have a solution that's really going to impact that. And that's what we want to do. We want to simply go from reducing risk to eliminating risk. The way Naborly Shield works, which is now the new intro to Naborly Shield, is it replaces last month's rent deposit if you guys want. It removes the need for a guarantor, and it guarantees those rental payments. And so obviously very excited about this. I'm going to jump in a little bit more, and I really truly want to open the floor to questions on this topic specifically, and hope you guys enjoy some of the strategies that we're using with landlords. So the solution that we have offered, Naborly Shield, it really even more so streamlines the process that we've already addressed. The tenant simply completes the application. If the tenant's approved for Naborly Shield, you can move forward with them. A lot of our, I've got a question here. Oh, come on. Chat. Perfect. So Clara asks, is it a regular practice in the industry for the owner landlord to meet the tenant before agreeing to move in? I'm, as much as I work for a AI company, I'm kind of old school. These are important assets. Naborly cannot fulfill every check in the book. I would always meet the tenant before they move in. The nature of Naborly is what you can do is you can have the tenant fill out the application before you meet them. So you have a good idea of who they are and if they're simply going to qualify from a financial perspective and other factor perspective. But I would eventually meet them before signing the lease. Clara, thank you for that question. So, and that doesn't change with the process that I lay out here. So the tenant completing the application, knowing if they approve for what we call Naborly Shield, which I'll dive in a little bit more. There's a cost Naborly Shield. If you are going to forgo that, you're going to be satisfied with how affordable that truly is. And then simply, if something changes, this is what we do. The coverage. So Naborly Shield is a product here. I've listed the different coverage items here and how that compares to last month's rent deposit. So you can spend some time looking at what that looks like. But more importantly, I just want your ear right now so I can describe you the claims process when it comes to delinquency and early vacancy, which is something that I can't guarantee any of you have experienced, but if you have, you remember it. So what happens if a delinquency occurs and Naborly Shield's in force? You'll claim. Within 24 hours, Naborly is going to pay you 100% of that missed rent from that first month. And at the same time, we'll investigate the best solution for this case. This is something that I'm most excited about this product. We will offer the tenant a short-term low interest loan, allowing them to continue to pay rent if it's in a very acute financial issue they're experiencing. We know that we must use our discretion and we use our financial analysis to understand if this makes sense. But when it doesn't, what we can do is simply assign a paralegal to your property who's going to start processing the eviction. So whether you filed the N4 already, slipped it under the door, our paralegal will take over from there. And that means you're in the loop, but you're not in the mess. Every month that goes by, you're going to collect rent on time every month. The eviction costs, legal fees, administration fees, all covered by Naborly Shield. When the tenant is finally out of there and evicted, what you're going to do is continue to collect rent until you find a new tenant. And so that's both our eviction coverage and income coverage during the eviction process and the vacancy process. When the property is vacant, you're going to be able to address any damages with our property damage benefit, which in this case does cover intentional damage. So if a tenant breaks a mirror or a window, steals your microwave, you're going to be able to claim that against Naborly Shield. We also offer a remarketing benefit. So if you use a leasing agent or you just simply need to clean the property up and get it spruced up, you have 1 month's worth of rent to cover those types of expenses. And so really the goal here is to level out and fulfill the spirit of the lease when it comes to delinquency, and make sure, one, you don't miss income, and two, you're not forgoing additional costs that you weren't expecting. We also cover early vacancy. So when a tenant breaks the lease, again, not very favorable to chase any income down in this case. I don't advise on it. Through the LTB, it's going to be hard and it's probably not going to bring any fruit. Rather than that, you'd claim through Naborly. We're going to pay you during the vacancy period. So if the tenant's left your property in shambles and it takes a month or two to get it back on the market, you're going to be able to collect rent both those months. You're going to also be entitled to those other coverages I mentioned, which is property damage and the 1 month's worth of rent. So again, just simply streamlining that, making sure that rent is coming in. Now, if we compare that to 1 month's rent for a deposit, you'll have that 1 month coverage. I know it's not worth even saying the comparison, but there obviously is a differentiation there. So what does that look like? As I mentioned, we're going to secure that rental income no matter what. There is a cost to it. Like any good service, $600 today to insure $24,000. You know, even if you don't want to pay that, what you can do is we've already forgiven the need for a deposit. Instead of having that tenant pay the deposit, have them cover the Neighborly Shield coverage, and you'll be able to have that peace of mind that something like Neighborly Shield is here to offer. Now, a lot of product talk there, but always something we're very excited and think something meaningful to you guys. Is there any questions right now about Neighborly Shield? I'm going to quickly afterwards jump into a little bit of a workflow on how you can use this in your day-to-day business. But I would like to open the floor for either chat questions, or if you guys want to unmute yourselves and ask a question, I please welcome it.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, Luke, can you hear me? It's Amit.
Hey, Amit. Yeah, I can hear you.
So would this apply to a pre-construction condo, as an example, where we've just taken interim occupancy? We haven't gotten the final occupancy yet. But how would this type of a model apply for that kind of a scenario? Or does it even?
Sorry. So, Amit, can you just simply start from the beginning there? I kind of got cut out there. Can you say that again?
Yeah, so I'm just talking about a specific scenario of a pre-construction condo where we just took interim occupancy and we're looking to rent it out during the interim occupancy period. So I just wanted to know if this type of model that that Neighborly offers, does that apply to my type of scenario?
Yeah, so simply anyone who's currently living in the property, unless they've gone through the Neighborly process, will not be qualified for Neighborly Shield. Part of the process of getting this type of coverage is the tenant actually filling out the rental application. So if once the property is vacant and you have a new tenant moving in, you're simply going to have to adopt the Neighborly screening process, have the tenant fill out the application, and then the Neighborly Shield quote will be available after they've submitted their application. Does that answer your question to me?
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Bruno asks, when does the process start? Second. Bruno, I'm not clear on your question, but I want to answer it. Can you clarify?
Yeah, I'm not too sure I understand it either. When does a process start? Second.
So the whole process when Neighborly takes over and starts the whole eviction process, rent's due on the 1st. Does it start on the 2nd of the month?
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have to contact
Sure. Great question, Bruno.
tenant, or do you guys do all of that?
So we leave it to our landlord's discretion. The number one thing that I'll say is if a tenant's late on rent, give us a call. We're going to have a conversation. We know that in a lot of situations like this, the tenant might come up with rent on the 3rd or the 4th. And so you guys are going to have a better pulse on this at that moment in time. And so use your discretion and let us know what you want us to do. If you want us to send you the rent and start the eviction process, by all means, we'll get that N4 on the correct date. Again, use your discretion. The only reason that you'd want to, be trigger shy is if we pay you and then the tenant pays you, then we just have to collect the money back. But it's just an administration process at that time. So final wrap up to that. As soon as something goes wrong, as soon as the tenant's delinquent, or as soon as the property is vacant because tenants left, let us know. We're going to work with you guys on exactly the next steps and what's best. And we'll always listen to you because you guys will have a better pulse on the situation. Clara asks, one, is this in Alberta? And absolutely, it's in Alberta. Second, does this pertain to sublets, extended tenants of tenants, or does this pertain to short-term like Airbnb? Short-term, not really. I mean, you could. We're base coverage is a 12-month coverage period. And so you're going to want to be mindful of that. That's how it's priced. But if you're prone to risk and you want something to protect you no matter what, that would be an option. Sublets, you can do a sublet. The main factor here is the tenant fills out the rental application. And if they do that and we understand what their obligation is to the lease, we'll make sure that we can extend this to proper coverage for the proper period of time.
So then would you need a copy then of that, I guess that new agreement or that sublet? How does that work?
That's good. That's a good question. And it kind of pertains to any lease. So what we expect on your guys' end, your obligation is to be professional, collect the leases, have those on file on your end, have, documentation of, current damages, that little ledger that you guys would want to do on a walkthrough. Those types of things need to be in place because if any claim is made, those are going to be important to us. But we do not need to see the lease. We just want to make sure that when we get this contract in place, that it matches the lease. The most important factors are lease start date, tenant's name, landlord's name, the amount of rent, and the lease start date. So really, we do not need to see the lease unless there's a claim. And if there, and then that would be something you'd present to us there. So on the sublet, same goes. And then Lucy H, $600 a year. So that's a great question. And I didn't want to confuse anyone, but I'm going to try and not to do that now. As you guys know, we have our screening analysis and every tenant comes out a little different. So some tenants, and maybe not all of you know that, but what is going to happen is they're going to have a Naborly score. And that's going to be based on their suitability and different risk factors. And so cohesively, we use that same analysis to price the risk. $600 related to this $24,000 income here is about 3.5% of monthly rent. And that's standard cost after tax for Naborly Shield. So the average cost Naborly Shield is 3.5%. So what you're going to see to cover $1,000 is in around $600. And that will vary based on the coverage amount. Thank you, Lucy. Monthly payment. Okay, so Lucy asked monthly payment or yearly. And do we have to sign the service with your company for the length? That's a great question. So the first initial term is a year. You can pay monthly or upfront. If you pay upfront, it's going to be 20% cheaper. And so that is the optimal thing to do. After 12 months of coverage, it will go month to month and you have the ability to cancel at any time. But we do want to align the first period of risk with that first lease cycle. Does that make sense? I can say that a million different ways. Perfect. I'll take that as a yes. So what you'll see is that when you have the report, I'm going to show you this to our workflow that I'm about to show you guys. I have the chat box up now too, so it's kind of right in front and a perfect spot for me to both see the presentation and see your questions. So I'm going to stop in at any time, so please ask a question if you have one. All right, so after you've had your Naborly account created, or if you have a Naborly account created already, you're familiar with the send application page. So this is step, you've met the tenant. It's time to see if qualify for both Naborly Shield and what their Naborly analysis looks like. You're simply going to put a property address in, the unit number, the monthly rent, and the lease term. So really what you guys need to collect, because you'll know all this information, is the tenant's name and email address. You type that name and email and send that along to the tenant. If you have multiple applications, what you're going to see is that you can simply add an additional co-applicant, and they're going to be able to have an application too. This is an important factor when it comes to Naborly is we want to underwrite every specific tenant on the lease because everyone's responsible for rent. We want to make sure we do an analysis on them. So both the report and the quote is coordinated based on that. Nancy asks, this would be per property. Correct. So again, everything we do, every quote we make is going to be based on a specific property and a specific tenant. So again, important factor, a tenant needs to fill an application. Once they do that, both a quote and a shield report will be ready for them. And yes, you're going to have a different amount of coverage at different properties. Okay. And then Lucy asks, so one interesting thing about Naborly is we don't need credit reports. That's probably the main factor that, 18-year-olds and under are looked at a little differently. But we do, in these cases, probably going to see a co-signer involved or a guarantor. And what's great about Naborly is you can actually have a guarantor, co-signer apply through Naborly, and we'll underwrite the risk based on them, which is actually probably in most cases going to reduce the actual cost because the risk is going to be a little bit lower for that. So no issues there, Lucy. After you send those applications, you're going to get this email. You're going to see it on their phone or their computer, wherever they get their email, and they can start the application from either. So they're going to click that. They have an idea of what's going on. And they start filling out our comprehensive application that asks all those you need to be concerned with. So we can furnish that same information onto you at the time you guys are ready to make a decision. The tenants upload their income and employment documents here and give us a very good idea of who they are for obviously all the important reasons that we need that. The next thing for you guys, as you can remember, the first thing is this application. The next thing is to look your email and see that your report is ready. So when you click that, you're going to be brought over to your dashboard, log in, and what you're going to see is a list of all your potential applicants. There's going to be a Naborly Shield button next to them, so you can see both the report and their Naborly Shield quote. And so based on how you guys want to make your decisions, again, Naborly Shield is going to be priced specifically on a tenant's risk. So a lower risk tenant is going to be more affordable than a higher risk tenant. And so you can simply jump into the Shield part of things and make a decision based on that. There are reasons that we don't approve tenants. Those would include and not limited to different things like tenants' rent income ratio or income ratio being too high. If there's a collection on their record within 2 years, that's a hard stop for us. We do accept tenants that do have collections, but not within the last 2 years. It says 5 years here. That's been updated and always will be updated because our goal is to always be more accommodating and invite more people into homes with a calculated risk. The only other thing, if an tenant is approved, you're going to be able to see this payment portal where you're going to get another summary of the coverage. You're going to see, what exactly the details are. And of course, the after-tax annual amount or the monthly amount will be available. Currently, we take credit card. So you just fill out the credit card fields. Sorry, Clara. Sorry, but do you have a list of tenants in that landlord choose from and process individuals we find? Clara?
You still there, Luke?
Oh,
Yeah, you're kind of starting to, at least for me anyways, you're starting to trip out a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, I think you're back now.
How about now?
Yep. Okay, yeah, so if you could start that over again, Luke, that'd be great.
In charge of your marketing and finding tenants? Okay. No, I think it was me, Clara.
Okay, so yeah, so start again. Start again. I think you're back now.
Sure. All right. Okay, so missing audio. Affirmative that you guys can hear me. Hey, bug you guys to turn your air knob. Thank you guys. All right. I banished other people from that so we can get this wrapped up. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So, Clara, thank you for the question. I just send me a note if you can't hear me again. I appreciate the interactness. Don't offer a list of tenants that others can choose from. At the moment, I think it's a great idea, and I think that it's a solution that should be out there. But at this point, you're in charge of marketing or finding another provider that does that, but I don't have any reference to one at this point in time. Jumping back in, Andrew, you said missing audio. Do you want to just give me a thumbs up that you can hear me? Or not, if you don't, I guess.
Yeah, I think we can hear you again now, Luke. At least I can now, but there was a little bit of a lag there.
All right, perfect. All right, well, good job. And this isn't anything too interesting now, and we're almost done there. And finally, just paying again through your credit card. And then you guys would be equipped with that peace of mind that that monthly rental income is coming in no matter what. As I said, it's pretty exciting for us to be able to release something like this. Our goal is to always solve investors and landlords' problems. And so, Clara, that's why I'm going to write that one down. And we can always look to offer more. Okay, audio is good. Thank you, Heather. All right, well, that's it for me, guys. And once again, we can open up for questions. Gary, if you want to lead the pack there, anything else you want to add or ask, I'm all ears.
Yeah, I mean, look, we still have some time left here. So if anybody's got any additional questions that they'd like to ask Luke, please go ahead. I mean, hey, look, you know what? I know you're all the way over in California, so I think for the most part, I think the audio and the video came through fairly good. I mean, sometimes I think we got to remember this stuff is like bouncing out into space and coming into our homes, right? So this technology allows us to do what we're doing this evening. So no, that was great. That was a great presentation, good info. But yeah, you know, we've got 10 more minutes here. You know, we're good until 9 o'clock. So if you guys have any additional questions, feel free to go ahead and fire away.
So what I'll do. Sounds good.
So what's that?
Is there thinking and if you are, I'm guessing you may not.
Yeah, they're starting to trip out there a bit there, Luke. You know what? Why don't we maybe turn off your screen sharing? Oh, I think he's gone. Hey, Luke, are you back?
Online.
All right, so you know what we'll do? Maybe we'll just give it 1 minute. If not, I think we're gonna call it an evening. Okay, so Gary, will this be available after for review? Are you talking about in regards to the presentation? Yeah, so if you want a copy of the presentation, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send a message to everybody. Send me an email. Actually, you know what? We'll send it to my admin, and she'll get you over a copy. All right, so send an email to that email address, and if you want a copy of it, we'll get that over to you. Okay. So it looks like, yeah, it looks like Luke's done. It's unfortunate. It's too bad because some pretty good questions coming in, and I can't answer any of these questions, unfortunately. So maybe what I may have.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, okay, you're back. Okay.
Hey, Gary.
Yeah, I can see you, and I can hear you. Yeah, you know what? Let me see.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? You're not sounding too bad right now, but is there a dial-in? I'm not sure. No, for this one here, there isn't, unfortunately. At least I don't see it. Actually, I think there was a couple people that dialed in. Does anybody have the dial-in number? I just can't seem to find it. If you do, can you maybe just type it into the chat box there for Luke?
Would be much appreciated.
Hold on a second. Are you able to answer any of those questions there, Luke? Because maybe it's okay. Hold on. Dial by your local. All right. I don't know if you want to try this one here. See if that works, Luke. You got the number there, Luke? Okay. All right, he's coming back, maybe. And what do you guys think of the presentation so far? Do you think it's something that that could definitely help you guys? Oh. Okay, Luke?
I just leave a computer audio just so I don't have multiple Garys.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, guys, for your patience. You guys can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. That's great.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I just wanted to say, guys, I appreciate it so much that you guys joined me and Gary today. It's a nice opportunity to get in front and just chat about all the exciting stuff going on here. And I wanted to probably understand you guys aren't all screening tenants at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up with Gary at the end of the call with a promotional code that actually that might not work, but what I'll do is there'll be a password that you guys can reach out to me. You've joined us on this call today. When the time comes that you guys have your Naborly account set up and you guys have a potential applicant who you'd like to proceed with Naborly Shield on, we'll be able to offer a 10% discount. It's not the biggest promotion in the world, but you must remember that we are a risk management company and we want to keep prices affordable for everyone. But as I said, you're going to save, 60 to $80 depending on your monthly rent. for a Naborly Shield coverage and have that peace of mind for just a little bit less. So I'll set that up all with Gary, so your crew over there has an opportunity to get a little bit better of a deal.
All right. And sorry, how are you going to do that then, Luke? You're going to send me an email and I'll send it out to the people that are on the call this evening?
Yeah. I'll just say we saw you at the investor forum, and that's all I need to hear to know that it's true.
All right, cool. All right. Yeah, Clara, you know what? This is I think probably like one of the biggest reasons why, and Luke, I'm sure you probably see it too, why a lot of people don't get into real estate investing. But here are the numbers. This is what I've learned over the years. I've been doing this now for about 11 years, myself and my team. And here are the real numbers, at least that we've seen. So out of 100%, 80% of the tenants are good. 10% of the tenants are great, meaning that they will actually leave your home in a better state than they received it. And then 10% of them are bad or professional tenants. So your job as a landlord is to really stay away from those 10%. And then a service that Luke here and Naborly provides is definitely something that's going to help you stay out of that, out of the professional and bad tenants. So I definitely highly recommend it. I wish something like this existed when I first started back in 2008 and 2009. You know, if it did, I probably wouldn't even have to have written the guide on tenant screening.
Well, we see a world now. It's kind of funny because it may just mean that, you know, and we actually have a property manager down in the United States using us. They're not looking at the credit report. They get the credit report from us and they get all that data, but they're just saying to the tenant, and it depends on the circumstance. It depends on your jurisdiction. As far as I know, you can't force the tenant to purchase this. It certainly is something that a lot of landlords in Ontario are just including as one of their costs. But what this company in the United States is doing is foreseeing that prior to the process and just saying, hey, we know we're financially protected. Now, again, I'm old school, so I think there's a relationship that you will have with your tenant. So you don't want to simply remove, you know, that type of interaction. But from a financial perspective, I think we've kind of nailed it. So if you like your tenant and there's some question marks, you don't ever have to worry about, you know, being too much of a stickler, I guess, on that tenant, because we'll make sure we got your back if something were to change.
All right.
Well, Claire, I appreciate your kind words there too. Thank you.
Yeah. So listen, we are at the 9 o'clock mark, so I think we're going to wrap it up. So Luke, thank you very much for joining and sharing what yourself and Naborly does. I think it's a great tool, and I think it's a really good resource for a lot of investors. And I think hopefully the people that are on the call will join and use your services, because I think it's definitely highly beneficial. I highly recommend it. So thank you very much.
Nat, thank you. Nancy, it is in Canadian dollars if your rental is Canadian. So perfect.
All right, cool.
Hey,
all right,
thanks to all of you.
All right, cool, Luke. And I'll reach out to you maybe next year. Maybe we might even do a podcast as well too. Kind of go through it again so that people have a chance to kind of really dive into it. So thanks again. Take care. Have a good evening.
All right. Bye.
Bye.